People, check it out. The Beeline Entertainment LLC is proudly sponsored by Dubby. That's right, get more Dubby. That genderless energy drink mix that's going to power you through your gaming, content creation, whatever you're doing, is there for you. Enter that promo code BrianB and get 10% off your order today. Get more Dubby, get more power. People, the Beeline Entertainment LLC is proudly sponsored by Bedford International Film Festival. That's right, stay tuned for some amazing events coming from the Bedford Film Festival. We'll have all the info you need right here on the Beeline. People, check out my girls Lady Faye and Mello Supremo over on the Allegedly Credible podcast. That's right, it's an amazing show. They got a lot of personality, two friends talking it up. You know what it's about. Check it out today.
Welcome, people. What's good? What's happening? What's going on? Yo, you know the regular stuff Brian B does on a Thursday night. That's right. It's gold and black on the screen. Yo, it's not the gold and black. I'm wearing my hoodie. I've been rocking this hoodie a lot. We got some new merch coming. I don't know when you guys are going to see it. I should be getting it soon, hopefully, so I can put it on. I'm wearing my old merch constantly or whatever. You see, we have a screen on the screen. I already got somebody on the way. And listen, bro, this is going to be a very, very fun one for your boy, Brian B. Also for the mom of Brian B. The mom of Brian B is going to enjoy this one as well. But this is the Beeline Entertainment place to be, where you come on and show. That's right. It's me, Brian B. We talking with somebody from the 80s, baby. Woo! One of my favorite movies that I've been watching ever since. I mean, literally, it came out when I was born. So that's 36 year anniversary coming up, and we got the star. But yeah, you're going to get to know it in 1 second, because before we do any of that, you already know what time it is. You already know what Brian B got to do before that. We got to do this.
Let's make some noise.
Show off, baby.
Fight.
Tonight. This movie right here.
Signed to a local hot label, Big On Records.
Want to do it later. Now.
It's the Beeline. It's the Beeline. It's the Beeline. E-N-T.
Yes, thank you so much. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am so appreciative of everybody that has been coming on and showing off. It's been amazing. We've had a lot of bands on recently. It's been a lot of talk, a lot of conversation, and a lot of amazing guests like we have today, Mr. I'm gonna give him the proper introduction. Yo, Andre, listen, you ain't ready, bro. I'm gonna give you the introduction. I give everybody the introduction. But yo, guys, if you haven't already, make sure that you like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, because that's what you got to do if you want to keep seeing my face up on your screen. We got the new merch coming. I hope you guys like the sponsors. Hope you guys like everything that's going on right now, because I'm very animated. I'm very excited, and I'm really enjoying myself, man. It's been amazing. Blah! Yo, we got a guest with us today, and his name is Mr. Andre Gower.
What's going on, Brian? I don't know what that's one of my favorite intros that I've had, I think, and I do a lot of podcast guests, so you were right at the top of the list. And yo, if I had your like kind of entrance music, I would have no problems in the world. Bro. That's a great intro there. I love it.
Thank you, man. That's actually, listen, Andre Gower saying like my intro. Yo, I'm doing things right. Yo, listen, man. Thank you so much for that. I'm getting ready to revamp that. I kind of. It's you know, it's crazy. Like, you know, you're a creator too, man. Like, you know, when you do something and you're like, oh man, it's dated to me, and then other people like see it for the first time, like, oh no, still I like it. I'm revamping it, so I can't wait for everybody to see the new one. I've had it for a while now, but thanks, bro. I really appreciate it. Hey, Beeline, listen, strap yourselves in for this one. I'm telling you right now, I'm taking this back a little bit, and we're gonna also, you know, visit some of the current as well. But Mr. Andre Gower is the lead star in a cult classic movie that I know a lot of you have seen. One of my favorite movies of all time, and that is where's it at? It's on this side. What side? The Monster Squad, baby. Remember the Monster Squad? Oh man, listen. We're going to talk with the star of the Monster Squad here today on the Beeline Entertainment Show. And before anything, like all guests, Andre, we're going to go ahead and have you introduce yourself and tell us about yourself a little bit, and, just a regular, and how you doing, and what's going on with your brother. How you doing, man?
Right now I'm doing pretty good. It's just me, Andre, here hanging out.
Yeah.
Coming out of we've had some weather on the West Coast here over the
Gotcha. Yeah,
last couple of weeks, and
weather, man.
I'm in LA right now and waiting for it to not be cold and rainy or windy, so I can finally get out and play some golf again.
There you go. Yeah, man. Weather's been this whole year so far. Like, weather has been dumb. Started off with like massive snow murdering people. I'm like, how the fuck is I don't even know what's happening anymore, bro. It's like you gotta stay off of TikTok because you'll think the end of the world is coming. But yeah, bro, it's craziness. But yes, you're on the West Coast. You definitely. I mean, it's usually nice over there. I know you guys are probably super surprised by the weather's going crazy.
Well, it's funny, a lot of LA people that I was born and raised LA, so I'm actually can talk about LA. I'm a native born Angelino, and
Gotcha, okay.
and I'm hardcore Valley kid. So any of you 818 babies out there, we're good.
There we go.
Skateboarding and riding your BMX bikes in the canyons. That's all what it's all about.
There you go.
But yeah, people from LA, they get so used to having 72 and sunny that weather comes in and rain and there's water on the road. Like, people freak out. They don't know what to do. But so we're coming out of that and enjoying it a little bit. But podcasting is an indoor sport, so that makes it work.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's crazy because you say it, and I'm from New Jersey. Like, I'm from the East Coast, and I'm from up north New Jersey. I'm actually in Atlanta now. One of the craziest things when I first moved to Atlanta was the difference in weather. And when they get snow down here, bro, they have no idea what to do. It's like alien to them.
Yeah,
and I mean,
it's tough.
I've seen people be trapped in cars and this and that. I'm like, bro, it's like barely any snow on the floor. But it's just different environment. Like, you don't know how to really handle it. It's more hills. Jersey, any kind of weather, we're going everywhere. It doesn't matter. You go to school, work, everything.
Well, you guys are tough. That's what it is. You guys are tough.
Hopefully. Or crazy, one or the other. I don't know.
I don't mess with Jersey people. I give them, I let them be Jersey and give them, like, hey, how are you going to handle that? Okay, I'll just sit and watch that. You go.
Yeah, listen, I'm crazy a little bit, so I can't argue. But Andre, yeah, we want to get to know you on this episode. Like I said, man, for those of you who don't know, like the Monster Squad, I just showed it. Like, here's another pic of it right now. This was a movie that it came out in 1987. Now, just to kind of give a brief introduction before we start asking Mr. Andre some questions. This was a movie that, as a young kid, I always was watching horror stuff. I was always watching horror. My family was not secluding me in any way. Chucky, Exorcist, everything. I was just feeding my ass demons and nightmares immediately. But the thing about the Monster Squad was it's one of the first movies, thinking about it now, like, really, you got the Stranger Things now. You got all these different shows now. It was a group of kids dealing with some dangerous stuff, like, what I'm saying, like on the screen. It was like you had the legends too: Dracula, werewolf, the damn, the swamp monster, the Blue Lagoon creature, whatever, like the legend, Frankenstein, and going up against some kids. What an amazing concept for a damn movie, bro. So just to kind of start off, so it's not just monster talk, we're going to talk about it, but how did you get your start in acting and performing?
Well, as I previously mentioned, I was, I'm born in Los Angeles, so sort of my proximity was close, but it really all has to do with my sister, Carlina, who's a few years older than I am. And, my parents and my sister moved down to LA when she was very young, about, 5 or 6. Yeah. And she started working, before I was even, in the cosmos. And, she did quite a bit as a kid as well. And I was just, then I was born, and then, age 4 or 5, years old, I was always kind of tagging along and a part of it. And I just was sort of next, I guess.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where everybody's like, how did you decide that's what you wanted to do? And I always joke, like, I was 5 years old and I was sitting in my office and I was, deciding what I was going to do with my life that day. and said, "Oh, let's try this career." It's usually you usually have some influence or some push from other people, normally your
Yeah.
parents. My sister had already kind of been established a little bit, for a short time, and then both of us were sort of kind of in the mix and rafting down that river, so to speak. And I was it's one of those things I think with kids that some take to it very easily, like and duck in water. And I think I just
Yeah.
started to swim, and you started very young, starting 5, doing anything,
Bro, anything.
that's right. So and there's kids that I grew up that started even younger, but 5
Yeah.
years old is I don't know what it's like to not be in this industry. I've been in a lot of other industries since, and in and out, and one foot in and one foot out, and kind of simultaneous, or take a break from one thing for a while. But it's kind of who you are, and what you are and what you did. And I just started really young and started working in print work and commercials and television, and then in films, and then had a very, very robust TV career as a kid. And even though Monster Squad is obviously the thing that most people kind of recognize me from or know me from in that era, but it was an awesome time because this is way before internet. This is so your pop culture was television and commercials and teen magazines.
Yeah.
So when you grow up in now, like you say, we have social media. We got Instagram and Twitter and the TikTok, as the
And
as
TikTok.
as us old say, the
TikTok, the Walmart.
I'm not on TikTok. I'm way too old to be on TikTok. They won't let me on.
TikTok is cool, bro. I was against TikTok for a while because I thought it was just girls bouncing their bodies around, so people can click on it. But I've given it a chance. There's a lot of interesting things. You want to know one thing I do love? Now that you're saying that, I follow wholeheartedly. I'm, like I said, Monster Squad came out in 1987. I'm an 87 baby. I'm 36 years old this year. I love nostalgia. I love the old school. I love the 90s, my time period. You know what I mean? But a lot of the TikToks and stuff like that, they'll have whether they'll find the old commercials or the old movies trailers. And I actually saw, which is crazy, I'm interviewing now. Just the other day, I saw they said Monster Squad. They had they played the trailer for it. And I was like, I'm about to interview the star of this right now. And it's just so crazy that we have the ability to kind of recollect the feeling that you got when I remember I was watching the Batman trailer. I can't wait to see this when you were 5 years old or whatever. So it's like, it's cool, man. It is like, a kind of a young man's game if you want there dancing and doing all that shit or whatever. But if you want to kind of just vibe out, bro, I'll be up until 2:00 in the morning on
well, that's what happens with as we watch technology over the last 20, 25 years. And that's sort of like the second half of our generation technology. That's the latest time of how it improves what we had, and it also combines other things. And each evolution of that, we started with AOL.com, and then we've gone to Netscape, and then we had Yahoo, which would
changed
the world as a search
Ask
engine.
Jeeves, remember all that shit?
Then Google came in and killed everybody, and created a whole new type of thing. And then you have social media, which is just the next kind of evolution of kind of content and community, if you want, or creating different things. And you wrap something up with something like you mentioned, which is a giant thing, which is nostalgia. And if you actually look at nostalgia anthropologically or sociological, nostalgia in sort of our modern times has like a 30-year clock on it. And I kind of noticed that right before I ended up making the documentary, because it was one of the things that kind of spawned the documentary in the Monster Squad. And we were going through this resurgence of this movie that died in 1987 because it wasn't popular. And in 2006 we had this screening, and at the Alamo Drafthouse, and it just kind of blew up. And so it hasn't really stopped since 2006. And probably in the 2013-14 was this peak of this kind of Monster Squad resurgence wave, coming into the 25th anniversary year, and then the 30th anniversary year. And I noticed that the nostalgia really builds at about 30 years. And I also had another television concept right at the same time that was kind of building off of that. And I realized those all correlate. And that 30-year mark really stuck with me. And, we got Wolfman's Got Nards, the documentary, kind of shot and out right on the, during the 30th anniversary, just jam. It was just this, year-long jam of Monster Squad anniversary year. And we'll talk about the doc in depth if you want to later, but still on nostalgia. I realized that 30 years was sort of that mark, and I remember being a kid. I'm considerably older than you are, Brian, but
a little bit.
You have fun in your eras, and I was an 80s kid. I was born in the early 70s, so you grow up, in 80s. You're 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, right in the height of this new decade that was absolutely different and crazier than any other decade that has been. And we had a proliferation of movies and television and music from all over, fashion, and just things that just kind of changed the world. And technology was one of them, which was great, even though it pales in comparison to what we have now. But I remember being a kid in the 80s, and I was really into stuff from the 50s. And it had a little bit to do with what your parents influenced life, because usually your parents, on average, most humans have other kids, in their late 20s to their mid 30s. And, they kind of push their influence or propel their influence on their kids with music and movies that they grew up liking.
For sure.
And my parents had different tastes and different experiences growing up and different music. And I loved music from the 50s. But I also realized that a lot of our content of the day, which was television and film only, was, had a lot of stories from the 50s. Now, granted, if you're a Cold War baby, like I am, you grew up in the 70s and 80s, the Cold War is a giant thing. And so a lot of content's like that. We were also post-Vietnam, but the 50s were this sweet spot. Post-Vietnam was very kind of still raw, still had a lot of stories where characters on TVs, were coming out of that era. Sort of like how we have today that, our characters that are cops or military, stories are coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan and things like that.
Yeah. Very true.
That'll change in, another 10 years after we have something else for people to, to talk about. But, 80s, that was the new fresh raw stuff. 60s were sort of waning. The hippie parents were having the kids, and we had great shows like Family Ties that, kind of talked about that, and, different eras.
Yeah.
But the 50s were that sweet spot because it was that 30-year nostalgia that was like, oh, this is great. And it started to become popular in pop culture. So you had great films and great books and great TV shows and the music. And I think a lot of, I loved 50s music because my parents did, because that was their age. And, we had great films like, you have Stand By Me and Dirty Dancing and, things like, you grew up now, obviously Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days were in the 70s, but they were coming out of that romantic 50s era. But you watch it for the first time as a kid when you're 8, 9, or 10, and you're in the 80s, and you realize that, oh, this is cool, and the music's great. Man. And so about, nostalgia is about a 30-year thing. And so, 8 years ago now, or 7 years ago, when the 30th anniversary of Monster Squad kind of had its peak. It was right on that 30-year mark. And if you look at us now, it's 2023. 30 years ago was 1993, which I was a junior in college. And, we had different music. We had, we were coming out of middle of grunge, the new era of when hip hop changed a little bit. I always call it like 1993. Henry McComas, my man. Henry McComas is gonna hate this, but he's a big hip hop head. Loves the music, and I always joke with him that '93 was the year that hip hop died. I was just kidding, but that's an old man saying that is what it is.
Gotcha.
So what I'm doing is Henry's considered to be language, so I'm attacking his era is what it is.
I got you.
I always give him some grief about that, but. That's when we had new artists come out of the old hip hop that built it and took the next thing, which is just the same thing technology does. That builds on what it has and take it to another stratosphere. And and then you have some of the which are now icons of the genre, just in music and hip hop. And in the early '90s, we were coming out of grunge, hip hop changed, and fashion was absolutely atrocious. in
Yeah, yeah.
1993.
90s was
No
crazy,
matter where
man.
you're looking for, you had big, ill-fitting jeans and like giant
Yeah.
sweatshirts and
People wearing
and
shit backwards.
clunky shoes. You wore your shit backwards. And now, if you go outside, you see a new version of that right now. We are in the 90s retread, reimagined
Yeah.
of big ill-fitting clothes, giant, we have neon colors are coming back a little bit, striped stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
boy, if like
Yeah.
multicolor Hilfiger shirts and like wearing our jeans backwards comes back in the next year, I don't know where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna have to bail out
Listen, bro.
somewhere.
I don't know. I mean, the people are like on a completely different level now. You got people wearing each other's clothes. I don't know. I mean, that's a really interesting, partake on it though, because I never really thought about it in that depth of like, how often nostalgia or what's like kind of the length of where nostalgia kind of starts to play in. I mean, I love it personally for just the fact of like kind of just being that reminder of the good times you had when life was a little bit less important. You know what I mean? Like it was just fun to be a kid and go out. I had a great childhood, which I'm very thankful for because I know, doing this show, especially like you see a lot of people don't, man. And
Sure.
like you were saying, like you were so involved in acting for so much of your life. Like I had a really kind of a hard kind of concept on child actors. And I think a lot of people do because you guys get so much like, uh, such an understanding that, oh, they're this, they were grown up this way, they were grown up that way. But somebody, Jeremy Miller, from Growing Pains, Ben Seaver, I've had him on the show and I've talked to Jeremy a couple of times now. And he
Yeah.
kind of really changed my mind, man. Like, all these kids aren't just like, damaged products and stuff like that or whatever. Like, some people can have a good upbringing and come up in this industry. And it was very like, refreshing. And even hearing you talking about, your sister came and, you kind of had a background and you've learned a lot. You seem real cool, down to earth, man. It's hard because I've heard some devastating stories the other way, on the other side. What kind
Well,
of helped you? Yeah, what was good for you there?
well, I think that's spot on, and I think most people have maybe a preconceived notion of child actors, growing up because they're usually put in there by someone else. They're not making most of the decisions,
Yes.
and so
Yeah.
they're a lot of kids are I don't want to say forced, but pushed or forced into doing something that they may not have chosen for themselves, but that's what they end up doing. I think sometimes that snaps back a little bit over time. But we usually only hear about the bad situations. We never hear about the good outcomes. Like
That's
we
true.
know that's very rare.
Yeah.
Until you're covering it, 30 years later
Yeah.
and talking to old, curmudgeons like me. But Jeremy's a great guy. I grew up with Jeremy. He's a couple years younger than I am.
Gotcha.
And he went, we're all human. We all go through our stuff. We're all kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
We go through adolescence. We go through puberty. We go through, high school and college. And depending on what your kind of experiences are is what shapes you. However, the most important thing is the people that you have around you that are doing that, that are either guiding you or not guiding you, either watching out for you or not watching out for you at all.
Yeah.
That's where those correlation lines kind of line up on the bad stories. And I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I'm not naming anybody's names or blaming parents or representation, but usually something that turns out bad, it's sometimes not the kid's fault. It's usually the people that are involved in their lives that have a bad influence or a good influence, or teaching this person how to be a human in this world. And then also, if you're in the entertainment industry while you're trying to be a kid in America, those are two different worlds. And, sometimes it's hard to navigate. There's a lot of good stories out there, a lot of great people that grew up in the industry that went on to do amazing things. And some people that had never heard of from again. And then there's stories that you hear that are just tragic, and that sucks. But it's also a numbers game. You got, not every outcome is going to be a Hollywood ending, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely true.
it's a weird world to grow up in. It's completely different. It's very, very real, but it's the fantasy world. You get to play other people and wear costumes and play on spaceships or go back in time. And it's a really unique place. And I felt very fortunate enough to have sort of that experience. But one thing that I always was very aware of, and also my parents were very I don't say concerned about, we're very conscious of, is not only being in the entertainment industry. So, you know, I was very involved in, I had friends from the neighborhood. I had that not film and television. I loved going to school when I wasn't working, because you still go to school when you're on the when you're on the set. You have to go to school
Yeah.
every day, so that's a whole other kind of thing to kind of navigate and deal with. And I loved going to regular school when I was not on a set, which and I worked quite a bit. I loved going on school trips. I love and I also loved
Yeah.
playing my youth league sports and my rec leagues. And that was a big part of my life, is my activities that had nothing to do with the entertainment industry. And
awesome.
I was always very trying to as balanced as I could be. And I think I think that made a difference, in me,
That's
in my
awesome.
life.
Yeah.
A lot of other people didn't have that opportunity because they had no other interests or other activities. And their parents or the people that were managing their world or their careers had no interest in balancing that out. And I think people kind of, the game glitches a little bit.
Bro, it's crazy how I'm listening to you say what you're just saying right now. And Jeremy kind of said the same kind of thing, as far as like having that balance of like, you're in kind of an unrealistic world. You have a little bit more responsibility. So you're being raised differently than, another kid that's not dealing with that. So you were kind of saying the same kind of thing like he was saying, even like the same way and everything you were comparing it to. It
Yeah.
was very interesting, man. And another thing you said was, you see the bad a lot more, like, or even you pay attention to it. You might see the good, but you're gonna talk about what stands out harder. So it's definitely understandable too. But it is refreshing, bro. Like I said, it's refreshing to see that you hear all these freaking monster stories and all this crap or whatever. But you see people who are also making it and successful, having a great time, because it looks so much fun, man. Like it's
Oh
like the
man.
dream.
Yeah.
Traveling.
Let me tell you, for those who are wondering about that part, it really is a unique experience, especially in my era. I can only speak to being a kid actor when I was a kid and being an actor, and I'm an adult actor and producer and creator and all this stuff. So things change, things evolve. The entertainment industry is not the same as it was in the 50s, as it was in the 80s, and it's not the same now as it was in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But it really is unique. It can be very, very fun. It's fascinating. And if you're smart, if there's any kid actors or aspiring kid actors watching your show, the thing to do is try to understand what you're doing and what you're involved in and learn as much as possible. And I'm not talking about learning the craft of acting, because most of the time you're a kid that you either have it or you don't. And it's that's the easiest part of it all.
Gotcha.
I'm an info sponge. I always have been. I'm just a knowledge accumulator. And I'm the guy that knows 80% of about 1,000 different things. I don't know 100% about.
You talk very well, so I'm like, I'm listening to you, and I'm like, you're going very well depth, and I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Well, like I said, I loved going to school. I had great teachers. I loved to read, and I don't think a lot of kids read a lot today if it's not just 144 characters or something.
Yeah,
but some do. Readings come back a little bit. I think we've had some good kind of bumps, into that world again. But even when I was on the set, I was fascinated by what everybody did and what things went where and how this is done. And so, I hung out with other actors, but I also hung out with the crew, and I learned what grips do. And I learned what, the gaffer does. And I learned, about, being a prop guy, and learned how to, I even, I chatted and be friends with everybody. I was on TV shows where I'd go and play with the grips, or we play poker at lunch, with the guys behind the set, and for like pretzels or dimes or something, and learned about their lives and their experiences. You learn what different people on a set do. You learn how movies and TV shows are made, and you learn the equipment, and you learn the everything. And I was just fascinated by it all. And I think that makes you a little more well-rounded, when you come out of that. And I think I was like that anyway, because there's a whole thing with how my brain works, and how it was studied when I was a kid, and what they actually told my parents to do. Like the state of California education, had this whole program, and they kind of counseled and guided a group of kids during my 6th grade year. And they said, this is how your son's brain works, and this is how we suggest you go about the rest of his kind of schooling years. And they didn't do that.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, that's very in depth.
which I think is I'm totally fine with it. But it's just it was very interesting, and I'm still interested in everything. and
That's awesome.
I love to learn as much as I can, even if it's just a little bit about something.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
still read. I'm looking at the nightstand at the book that I just finished last night, so I got to start a new one. And I love TV shows
Yeah.
and documentaries and learning stuff. And boy, then you get someone like me with the internet, and you can just find out anything you want.
Anything
So it's
in the
great. You can
planet.
just look something up. You read a book. One of the best things the internet does, and this is the best blend in my mind of analog and digital, is if you're sitting there reading a book and they mention a place, or they mention a word that you don't know, or a geographical location that you've never been to, or they're explaining what it looks like, now you
Yeah.
can see it, or
Yep.
you can learn that word in 10 seconds.
Making us robots.
You can open up your phone and go, what was that place he was talking about? What is this mountain range in the Himalayas? Oh, it looks like that. Okay, now this book is even more interesting because I can visualize it
Yeah.
with real stuff. It's a daily occurrence. I come across a word that I'm like, is that used right? If I using that, I got to look up, or what is that word? I've never heard that word used in this context. So, dictionaries and thesauruses on the internet are fantastic. And Wikipedia is okay too. So it's great. Yeah. I love
we got a
it.
calculator for our damn life now. You know what I do all the time, constantly. I don't know if this goes back to nostalgia too. Like I remember a movie that I watched when I was younger and stuff like that or whatever. Like I was just doing it the other day on the show, and I remember oh damn, I remember this guy was in it. Let me go see that guy. And then I'll go and look up the movie, and I'll look up the cast, and I'll look up what he did and what he's in, or look up the other people. So it's also kind of a refresher course for if you want to find somebody or remember something or find where you can watch movies like the Monster Squad and all movies that you did. I wanted to ask you also, because I definitely want to talk about Monster Squad stuff, but I also wanted to ask you, what was the first role that you played in that you got when you first started acting? What was the first thing you did?
Well, the first official thing I ever did was a Jack in the Box commercial. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, when you're the cute little mop-headed kid that can stand there and look goofy or have a cheesy grin or something, you do a lot of commercials. And
Gotcha.
I did a massive amount of commercials as a kid. And the very first one was a Jack in the Box fast food commercial.
Awesome.
It was, I think I was 5, I think. And, like I said, my sister was, around it before. My sister and I actually did a handful of commercials together, because we would show up to auditions at the same time. We would just get cast in the commercial. And, I went on to do, like I said, I mean, it's close to 100 commercials or something like that. And
wow, damn, I didn't know it was that much.
25 or 30 of them were for Mattel by itself, doing toy commercials.
Yeah.
And a lot of Hot Wheels commercials, a lot of Masters of the Universe commercials, things like that, which now you go back and look at YouTube and you can see all these old commercials. So it's great.
Commercials used to be so amazing, man. Especially talking about it now, you used to have commercial for the toys that you want, or even like movie trailers, even cars and restaurants and stuff like that. I was watching the old school McDonald's commercials. Remember when McDonald's and Burger King were all about kids and fun, and it was like Disney World. And then you watch McDonald's commercials now, and it's just they're all plain, and you know what I mean? I don't what happened, bro? Things used to be so much more engaging. Now everything is just there. Or drug commercials, or Viagra, or whatever the hell they're gonna sell.
That's
damn,
right.
what happened?
I think in the 80s and 90s, it's where the money in fast food was aiming at the kids. And then it went into aiming at the only price point that a lot of families could actually afford to feed their family. So it went away from this kind of crazy kid-oriented Happy Meal, having clowns as your spokesman, or the Burger King. And if you look at the physical locations, it was an astonishing thing that I learned years ago, that a McDonald's that had a play place, like the ball pit and the slides and all that, did 28 to 30% more business than ones that didn't, because it was kid oriented. And you had the Happy Meal, which changed the world. But then you also, if you want to tie in fast food and TV shows and movies, is they always had a kid tie-in with a toy or a collectibles glass or a cup or something. They're starting to do that again now.
I love that shit, bro.
They've got the ghost face popcorn holder and stuff. So
I didn't see that.
That's the new thing now. People are selling them for a bazillion dollars on the on the internet. But
It's crazy.
you used to have like, oh, go now and get the Masters of the Universe collectibles 4-set glasses
Yes.
at McDonald's, or
Yes.
your the whatever movie du jour had had a tie-in, and they were all based around kids to get a little collectible toy, or you collect all 6. That means you had
Like
to go
50.
at least 25 times to get the rotation of the toy you wanted, and then you could trade with your friends and like, hey, I got the green guy, I want the blue one,
Great
whatever.
marketing, man.
So it's genius, and we spent a lot of money in fast food back in the day, and
Really?
now we're all dying for it, but that's okay.
Yeah. I guess that's the bad part and shit. Like,
That's right.
because it was so like like we were saying, like, man, it was just so engaging, man, and it was just like you said, bro. Like, you do pay for it a little bit because you ain't paying attention to your health and stuff. Like, you can't just eat crazy all the time. But
Right.
it was just so much more like the thought process behind it is just like, damn. I remember I had a birthday party at McDonald's one time, like when I was like really young.
Yeah.
And that would sound crazy, but it was the best shit in the planet. Like, played in the
it's
ball
great.
pit and had burgers and fries, a cake. I don't know,
Absolutely.
bro.
I mean, look, I've done McDonald's and Burger King commercials. I mean, I've
see,
I've
you got
been on
paid.
camera with Ronald McDonald. I mean, it's ridiculous.
There you go.
So it's like,
That's phenomenal.
yeah. So, but that's that's that era, and a lot of it has to do with tie-ins and merchandise and marketing, and co-branding like a movie or something, because it's a huge bump in in awareness, and that's this is before the internet and before social media, so you had to have some sort of way to get that word out about your movie or TV show, and
very true.
Commercials not just about it, but with a tie-in and a brand and a location, and it's usually fast food.
That's a good point.
I didn't
even think of that.
Did it, or soft drinks or certain candies or certain foods. They always had some sort of tie-in, because there was also even double cross pollination and promotion with brands and movies, because you had product placement a lot more. In type of movies, like Monster Squad. Speaking of Burger King, there's Burger King, there was Pepsi, there was Fox Photo, there was Adidas. Obviously things like that. So there's a lot of tie-ins like that, that sometimes are noticeable, and sometimes a little bit more subconscious or subliminal, and
really
you realize where that the overt kind of marketing is, and sometimes it's a little covert.
Well, speaking of Monster Squad, let's go ahead and dive into it a little bit, man.
Yeah.
So that's definitely. Would you say Monster Squad is one of the biggest things that that you did in your career? Is that one of the highlights for you?
Well, that's two different things, and yes to both. I mean, not only a highlight, but also kind of the the biggest kind of thing that you could be involved in. A giant studio movie with multiple creature effects, location adventures, chase scenes, things blowing up, monsters.
Such a good
dynamite
movie, man.
Kids with shotguns, and so it's just crazy. So it's
that shit was great, man.
Which you can't make now, but yeah. I mean, by far. I mean, I did a lot of cool TV stuff, a lot of great series. It's funny, because if you look at my resume, most people that we chat with always says, you have like the best cool TV resume ever. Like, you've been on every cool show, you've done a guest spot on this, you've done a guest spot on that, you did this series. And I'm like, yes, this is true. I was very fortunate. I did a lot of television, did a lot of cool guest spots. I got to be on the A-Team, I got to ride in Kit,
wow.
I got to do a lot of these shows.
Really?
The problem with that is because my TV career is, I did 6 or 7 television shows that went 1 season or 2 seasons, instead of doing one show that went 8 years that everybody knows, because it's a long running show. And when you do that 8-year run on a show, you don't have the time or the availability to go do other cool shit. I did, because I my career was so full and busy, but it was always sort of kind of broken up into pieces, and I wasn't really hitched to one wagon for long enough where I didn't have the opportunity to do a lot of other things.
Gotcha.
There are everybody has stories of shows that they auditioned for, that they came close, or they got cast and recast, or they were involved with another contract and they couldn't do another show. And yeah, there's plenty of those for all of us to share and go around. And some are like, oh man, but yeah, my TV career was a lot of those shows that went 1 season or 2 seasons, and just didn't continue. So I had those opportunities and a little bit more freedom to do these rad shows as guest spots. But Monster Squad, comes along right at the height of all of that. And, it was a big studio movie that, even when you were auditioning, you realized that it was, probably a big deal at the time, because it had a decent budget, had a crazy story. And, you end up, through the casting process, everybody in town read for this movie, even out of town.
Yeah.
One of my favorite people in the world, I met because of the auditioning process of Monster Squad. After I had been cast as Sean, which is the lead, which is not the original role I auditioned for.
Oh, it
And
wasn't?
yeah, no, I did not read for. I actually auditioned and screen tested, multiple times for Rudy.
Oh,
And
that's damn, really?
so, well, yeah, and it makes sense if you actually are familiar at the time as a casting director, and with my body of work leading up to Monster Squad. I
Got
was the
you.
cool kid with the great hair and maybe a leather jacket thrown in there, a lot of hair product, and so that's Rudy. And
Got you. Okay.
I auditioned as Rudy the whole time. I never read one audition line as Sean Crenshaw, and
That's crazy, man.
I know why. I know. Could I've played Rudy? Yes, I would have played a little more laid back, probably a little more cheesy, but it would have been fun. But Ryan Lambert walked into that audition and became Rudy in that moment,
You
because I know
saw it.
how I know how he handled that audition, because we've talked about it for 15 years now,
Got you.
and Ryan became Rudy in that room. And then, it's some point along the way, the group of people making decisions for Monster Squad, whether it was Penny Perry or Fred Decker or Peter Hyams, the producer, said, we've got to cast the lead. We've got to cast this role of Sean. And we read everybody in town and we haven't picked one yet. And then somebody said, what about that kid we read for Rudy that, was good, I guess, but Ryan Lambert came in and nailed it. What about that kid, Andre? Could he be Sean? And usually in that situation, you get a call and go, hey, can you come back in and read a different role? And you do, and they make a decision. I never had to do that. They just cast me straight as Sean off my Rudy auditions.
It's a good
And
choice.
so, I give much appreciation to whoever was that first voice that said that, because
That's awesome.
everybody ended up in the exact right spots, I think. And
Yeah.
so we have cool stories to tell about it, later. But yeah, that was that. And then we shoot the movie. It's this big giant thing, and super fun, a lot of hard work, 3.5 months straight, very laborious, production, because you're working with kids and creatures, and it's a long shoot. And working with kids is always tough, because you can only there's so many regulations and actual laws that you have to abide by while you're filming with kids. And it all depends on what age they are. And we had 3 different age groups, and so it was a very complex kind of ballet of having had to get this movie shot with kids. And so it was kind of arduous for 3.5 months that we were 3.5 months that we were shooting it. And and then it comes out and hyped up, and we want this big movie to come out, and it ends up coming out 2 weeks after The Lost Boys. It has a PG-13 rating. The marketing campaign is all kind of weird and contradictory, and the reviews came out from the critics and they all hated it, and the movie bombs.
I just don't understand. Yo, listen, and Beeline, listen, guys, for anybody who has seen the Monster Squad, listen, like you said before, Wolfman's got Nars, Shotgun Horace. Like, I don't understand how that movie can be seen and people can say, oh, that's you have Dracula, the Wolfman, you have kids forming a squad, and even the parts that weren't involved, like the kids in school. That's one thing that I like. That's why I brought up like the Stranger Things stuff, whatever. I like the group of kids that's going after the big bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? You don't think kids can take on, a challenge. But these kids are coming together. They're just friends. They're not magic powers, not Power Rangers. They're just kids, and it's just normal, so you can relate to it more. The movie's fun as hell, man. I just don't understand how it was not like received that way. That's why it's very challenging, because I was born. I didn't know about the marketing process, because I was, I just watched it. And I watched it from a young age all the way to now. I show my kids it. I'm like, yo, you gotta watch the movies. Monster Squad. They fight Dracula, and it is the rift at the. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so much dynamic to the movie. It's very shocking to hear that people didn't really receive it like that.
Well, I think that was for a couple of reasons. And one, I'll start with the after effect of that lasting power, that the themes and the tones and the characters and the kids coming together to fight the big bad, the adventure of it all, the fantasy of it all. We all have those dreams as kids, and so that's what resonates with whatever age kid sees this movie and connects with it. Whether an '80s kid, they see it in the '90s, they see it in 2008 for the first time, they become a fan,
My kids
or
loved it.
even in the last couple of years. because those themes are kind of timeless and they hit. I think they're archetypal and they're stuck in our kind of, kid adventure, kind of skeletons. And but at the time, what's interesting is it's not like today. Monster Squad, in 1987, the way movies worked is when you had a theatrical release, you had 48 hours, maybe 72, for your movie to reach a certain number of ticket sales set by some dude in a suit somewhere, either with the studio or with the theater chain, usually with the theater chain, saying this title X has to reach this number because it's in this many screens, otherwise it's gone.
Gotcha.
And Monster Squad came out. A couple things that going against it, like I said, it had a PG-13 rating, which meant you had to have a parent that was someone above 13. You had to have a parent accompany anybody under 13. Parents at that time, they didn't want to take their kids to the movies. They wanted to drop their kids off at the Cineplex or the 2-screen or the mall and have a day off and let the kids go see the movies on their own. The kids used to get on their bikes and ride to the mall or ride to the theater and lock them up, on the sun, up against the parking meter and lock their bikes up with chains and go see movies. And so the PG-13 kept that away. If the kids were 8, 9, or 10, the parents weren't going to allow you to see the movie because it seems like, it's scary. It's got bad language and content that I don't want my 10-year-old to see. And then the critics in each town, on average, it was 75, 85% of the critical reviews from newspapers or whatever, remember, pre-internet, didn't like it. And they didn't catch it. They didn't understand it. They probably weren't kids themselves, at the time. Thought it was kind of campy and lame. And a lot of people, wrote reviews off it that, either saw it or half of it. And, the marketing campaign kind of was different because some of it had this kind of campy kids adventure thing. The other thing had this really dark monster movie element to it. And so people, I think, were a little confused. And we had this weird kind of, call to action type of marketing campaign with billboards that made no sense to anybody. Today would have been great because you have a QR code and go, what the hell are they talking about here?
A lot more
but
intuitive.
they didn't have that. And like I said, in that day, you had about 48 hours for a movie to reach a certain point. Otherwise, it's automatically yanked because the next movie comes in. And because it's about money. And whatever, studio exec or theater chain exec says it's this title, The Monster Squad, has to reach this number by Sunday afternoon at 2:30 p.m. Otherwise, it's gone. And I did it in my, kind of cheesy.
Oh yeah, I heard.
But it's, I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then it was gone. The average it stayed in a town was 1 weekend. And sometimes it lasted to the next weekend just because they had it for 7 days anyway. Now, Monster Squad, what happened is the kids that saw it on that opening Saturday, either a matinee or they went to the drive-in with their parents or their, brother took them at the 6:30, 8 o'clock p.m. showing on Long Island or whatever, went, holy crap, that was fun.
Yeah.
And then I can't wait to tell Tim and Billy and Susie and Steve on Monday morning at school. And so what happened, and I know this as fact because I have this story told to me thousands of times, is I went to school on Monday and said, yo, Brian, you've got to see this. Like, I saw this cool movie and I'm going to go see it again on Saturday. You've got to come with me. And you're like, yeah, I'm totally into that. That'd be great. I couldn't go the other day because I had a Little League game or whatever it was. Let's go Saturday and see it. And you're going to see it again and I'll see it for the first time. And they ride their bikes to the mall and they get dropped off at the Cineplex and the movie's not there anymore. So they can't see it. And it disappeared.
That's crazy, man.
So the word of mouth type of thing just wasn't allowed to happen.
Yeah.
Because what ended up happening is they talked about it. The kids that saw it in the theater for that week to 3 weeks at the most, all talked about this movie that no one knew about for a year. And then it came out on HBO and people started recording it. And then they started handing that video cassette around the neighborhood and around the playground. And everybody passed around this movie that they had talked about last year. And then it came out in the video store and blew up. And that's where everybody, probably, the other third of the original audience found it. And it just became this huge thing for, a year or 2, 3 in the video store and on HBO. It was a big player on HBO for about 2 to 3 years. And then it disappeared for 19 and a half years.
And then that's crazy that you just said that because that's how I saw it. My mother, I was telling you before, my mom, and my mom she's picky, man. Like with movies and stuff like that. She loves, you remember Clown House? I don't know if you remember Clown House.
Clown House.
Clown House, bro. You remember that movie?
I'm not watching Clown House because never liked clowns. So
Oh man, okay.
Maria
You
can have
Dracula.
Clown House. Maria can have Clown House.
You fought Dracula. Come on, Andre. You fought.
No clowns. I don't mess with clowns, my man.
But
Sorry,
my mother,
Maria. Sorry, Maria.
She loves stuff like that, man. And it's like she's not like she's picky with movies, but like my mother used to love Monster Squad, and she had it on tape, man. I remember watching it now, Monster Squad with the damn letter with the marker on it. And we used to watch that damn tape until it ran out, man. Me and my sister, we loved that. I mean, I'm a horror buff, so I love horror. And like you were saying even before, like the one thing about it is you can't really tell where it is. Is it kids? Is it a little more adult? You know, when Dracula picks up old girl and give me that amulet, you bitch. Like, and we sitting there watching this like, yo. But it was so good. Like, it's just crazy. So were you shocked when it did pick back up and like it became like this cult following? And attached his name to that?
I mean, it was absolutely fascinating that happened because
Awesome,
we
bro.
thought this movie, we knew there were some fans out there, because shortly after Monster Squad, as it comes out, Ryan Lambert went right back to his television show, which was Kids Incorporated. I ended up.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I ended up going right to a brand new giant television show on a brand new network called Fox. I was on one of the original 6-7 shows on Fox called Mr. President, starring George C. Scott. And we started that right as Monster Squad was coming out. And Monster Squad doesn't do well. And we're like, oh, that's disappointing. That really sucks. We wanted to have action figures and Burger King tie-ins and toys.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
And a sequel, of course.
Yes.
But it didn't really kind of bump and really kind of derail my personal career at all. Unlike it affected a couple other people, or one in particular. But because I went right into 2 more television shows for the next couple of years. And then I went off to I took a break and I graduated high school and I went to college, and there was things that I wanted to do that only could happen in college. And so I made that decision to take a break from the industry. And I wanted to play. I was always playing sports as a kid. And, I started as a tennis player, as a baseball player. I started playing golf, when I was 14. And but basketball was always my favorite sport. And my dream of all dreams was to play basketball in college somewhere, and it doesn't matter where.
Okay.
And my senior year in high school, I kind of made that, kind of a target. And if there was an opportunity that came up, I would exercise that, and that's what I did. So I left the industry for 4 years and went off to college, bro. And I played basketball in college, and that was another kind of challenge in a whole other world. It's the early and mid '90s in college basketball, which I think is the heyday of college basketball.
That's
awesome. Being the short white guy was always kind of another challenge, but
challenging.
Then none of that bothers me, and I loved it. And then stayed away from it for a little bit and came back, and then so now we're speeding up to 2006, and they invite the Alamo Drafthouse gang invites 4 of us to Austin, Texas to do a 35 millimeter screening of the Monster Squad that no one has seen. Most of the audience has not seen Monster Squad on a screen or in widescreen ratio. They've only seen it on videotape, which is compressed, and they've only seen it on HBO, which is compressed. And you lose a lot of imagery in this movie when you don't see it in widescreen. And so they sold out. They only had 1 show, and then it sold out in minutes. And they added a second screening that night, and then it went bonkers, and the internet blew up because it's 2006.
Crazy, yo.
And a couple months later, we're headlining giant horror conventions. First time we've been at conventions and appearing as a cast and signing autographs, and having other screenings every other weekend all over the country and internationally, and it just didn't stop. And we thought it would last for about a year or two, because we're like, oh, something like this is cool. Everybody's revisiting Monster Squad. That's kind of cute.
Yeah. Not now.
We said, hey, maybe this will last a year, maybe into next summer.
Yeah.
And, it hasn't stopped. That was 2006, which led, up to this crazy kind of experience of how impactful this movie was on the kids that saw it originally, and whenever they did pick it up, that led me to, develop the concept to make a documentary about that impact on the fan base that saw it.
Yeah. Please speak on the fam. I was definitely going to touch on the fact that with things like Comic Con and Dragon Con and all these things where people literally like they love exploring. Whether it be like we were talking about like nostalgia or like I had somebody on from a movie called Manos: The Hands of Fate, and this was considered one of the worst movies of all time. It was on Mystery Science Theater, and I had the child star on it.
Okay.
And she told me about it, and I was like, okay, but there's a following for it.
Sure.
Just because it was considered the worst movie of all time. So it's like people love to attach themselves to things, especially things I feel like if it's not popular, like let me make something, good or whatever. But the Monster Squad, I feel like, just because of the dynamic, the monsters, people who are monster lovers, like I think there's so much that collectors, fans, everything can have a part in. That I can understand perfectly why that movie would continuously blow up throughout the years, man, and just be treasured.
It does, and
Crazy.
people you never know what people are going to connect to with something weird, something dark, something scary.
Yeah.
The main thing that we kind of really figured out about what hit with Monster Squad, which I don't necessarily think was aimed for or on purpose when Fred and Shane were writing the story and writing the script. They had a little of their own childhoods, kind of wrapped up in there, which makes total sense. But everybody that is a Monster Squad fan, at some degree or some level, connects with the fact that it was a group of misfits, a group of dorky kids, that their group of friends are other dorks and kids that are of like mind and like the things that they like, because they always felt kind of singular or alone or an outcast. They weren't the cool kids. They weren't the jocks. They weren't the rich kids that had everything that they needed given to them. And these kids had to build their own world, and they learned and they read books and they watched old movies and they read magazines and they subscribed to things like famous monsters of Filmland and were members of like the Count Dracula Society as 10-year-olds. And they liked comic books and they liked movies and they liked cartoons, and they created a group that were tight and best friends. And that's what everybody resonated with as kids, is because I was the misfit in my neighborhood. I liked this weird shit that no one else understood, or I like to read comic books and I got made fun of by the kids that were coordinated and could play sports and all this other stuff. And I was like, yeah, but that's what it's about. You're finding you find your like tribe, and you bond, you kind of bond together, and you create a gravity that allows you to go on and save the world from Dracula.
For real, bro. Yeah, I feel you, man. And it's really interesting talking to you about it too, because like I said, you're a part of my childhood, man. Like watching the movie, seeing Sean, fight, and me and my sister were very big, active imaginations. We watched that movie and then go in the living room and we y'all like we doing everything, we fighting Dracula and shit. And it's like that's development, man. And like you said, fitting in places where maybe you don't fit in other kind of classifications that's known. It's always good to fall back on have the people who do like to just hang out and just chill and read the comics together and watch the scary movies together and play the Sega games. And it's a lot, man. It speaks a lot. It speaks in volumes, and I'm glad that people are having the chance to experience this now, because I love it. It's been a great part of my life. It's a memory. I'm passing it down to my kids. I want them to pass it down to their kids so it can just live on forever. You're a part of something that's going to live on forever. And I mean, it's got to feel amazing, bro. It's got to feel like, really, really gratifying at the same time.
It's certainly it's certainly very interesting. And if you're smart, like I try to act sometimes, if you can step back from yourself or that kind of center of it and look into it from a different perspective and realize that it's very, very unique. Not everybody gets to be a part of something like that. Even though it didn't happen at the beginning. We all wanted to be part of a giant movie that had a sequel and action figure tie-ins at Burger King. That didn't happen. But what also happened is 30 years or 20 years later, and then 30 years later, now 35, 36 years later, we're still talking about something that people really, really care about, and something that has really impacted them and has influenced their lives, which is what really the documentary is about, of how deep this kind of impact went, but also, kind of the, connection to this movie in particular, but movies in general can have on people. And I always used to say, in groups at theaters, and I was like, look, it's so much cooler to be a part of something that a movie that died in 1987, that we were still talking about it in 2017, now 2023. I'd much rather be involved in something like that than be the star of a movie in 1987 that was the #1 box office of the summer that no one can remember.
Yeah. No, you're
So
absolutely right.
I don't mind. I don't think I would trade it.
No, yeah. I think it's working perfectly for you, man. When you guys did the documentary, because I did see pieces of it. I actually saw it a little while ago when I thought we were actually going to do this interview, so I don't remember everything from it.
Yeah.
But I do know that for a fact. Was it something that you were trying to get the whole cast back to do? Was it just something that was kind of demanded by the fans, or were you just kind of, hey, let's touch base? I know you had a podcast, but was it the documentary because people were kind of demanding it?
Well, no, I think the documentary was really something that came, in my original, kind of conceptualization of a documentary was different than what we ended up with. Thankfully.
Gotcha.
Because, Ryan Lambert and I had kind of teamed up, during this nostalgia wave and this resurgence. And, we had the podcast, which was just Ryan and Andre, which are two very similar goofy dudes, but completely different human beings. But we get along so great, and we just had these funny conversations, so we just started recording them, and then having guests on and having this just kind of hangout sessions.
So fun.
And of course, we had to go back to the well, and we call it our podcast Squadcast, of course, but which was fun. But we were going around doing appearances, and I actually created a show that Ryan and I co-hosted that Legendary Studios and Nerdist channel bought called Short Ends. Because I love short films. And so Ryan and I we were the co-hosts of the show that I created, that we, curated and celebrated short films and interviewed the filmmakers and talked about, how their process, because short films don't get enough, attention. Now they're getting a little bit more, but this is back
horror
in
ones,
2016.
Ones. Yeah,
and
man, great.
So we were doing a lot of stuff, and we had been doing these appearances and conventions and signings and screenings all over the place. And I kept hearing these stories. And for the first couple of years, I was like, oh, we hear the same stories. Like, oh, this kid loves the Monster Squad. He built a treehouse in his backyard and he still likes it. And we didn't really understand it for a couple of years. And then we all did, but I personally, started kind of realizing that these stories that were getting all over the place, including in the UK and in Australia and in the US. It doesn't matter what state. It can be in Florida or California or New York. And these stories they're telling the exact same story. And I'm like, how is these completely telling the exact same story of how this movie impacted them and what them and their friends did in the neighborhood, or how they found the movie, where they saw it for the first time? And I started listening to these stories about how these kids connected with this movie. And this is 20, 25 years after the fact, or sometimes 10 years after the fact, or 2 years. And I realized that this is something different. This isn't just a fan base that likes a movie that was obscure. Something happened to these people when they watched this movie and they really connected with it. So I started paying attention to the stories a little bit more. And then I realized that it was the archetypes and the themes and the characters and the adventure and what happened in the story on screen that these kids related to, that they wanted to carry on in their own neighborhoods. And it infected them as kids, and it affected them as adults, because it sometimes it put them on their career paths. This singular experience with this movie put them on their career paths. Yeah. And so I started realizing all these different kind of stories, and I realized those fan stories were a story. And I thought that we should put something together like that. And I got very, very lucky. Like I said, I had a different conceptualization originally, but I ended up meeting out of pure serendipity on a sunny afternoon in the Valley, Henry McComas, Wes Caldwell, and Aaron Kunkel. I was going to lunch with one of my oldest friends, Jen Oth, who all worked at a place called Pilgrim Studios. And they're a big reality show company. And, we're starting to do a bunch of kind of biography and documentary in-house things. And Henry and Wes and Aaron, they were all Monster Squad fans. And we met out on the sidewalk just as we were crossing paths. And then we ended up going out, and they learned that I was thinking about a documentary. And Henry came up with the idea, said, hey, look, I think this is something that we could take here. If you'd like to have a meeting about that, and let's see what we can do. And very, very quickly, a deal got done, and I had a studio partner and an amazing production crew led by Henry and Wes and those guys. And I put all the, we had, we went on that 30th anniversary tour at the Alamo. We went to 17 cities in 17 days.
Oh,
Ryan
wow.
Lambert, Ashley Bank, and I, as this on the 30th anniversary tour for the Alamo Draft Houses. I took my production crew with me, so we were going all over the country for 17 days
That's
straight.
incredible.
Documented that. We had dozens and dozens of on-the-road interviews, in the studio interviews, and we really only shot that documentary for about 10 months. And we had 50 terabytes of footage. And Henry whittled that thing down to a slick 90 minutes. It's now 86 and a half. And we festivaled within a year of rolling cameras. And awards on the festival circuit. And it just, the documentary turned out so much better than I could have ever imagined, because it just got deeper and kept growing. And that was all because it was in the hands of really rad dudes like Henry McComas and Wes Caldwell and Aaron, who were all Monster Squad fans to begin with. But then this was the job to make this movie, with me as a partner, and nobody at any moment thought this was a job, and we all enjoyed this experience and made a great documentary that everybody loved. And we had some hiccups getting it out. There was an issue. We lost a big acquisition deal due to some miscommunication issues, and so it got delayed coming out. But it released in October of 2020, and then during the height of COVID.
Right when it needed to be.
Right, and so it was, but it's done well, and people love it, and I still get to go around and show it and talk about the documentary and the impact it had on people and how much it resonated with people, and I appreciate that every time I get to talk about it.
That's awesome, bro. And I'm really glad to hear. I mean, starting from the beginning, honestly, so glad that everything's good with you, and you're still, out here and enjoying the ability to have, like I said, I've said it a million times, and I'm not just blowing smoke. Like I grew up with this movie, man. That's why it's like when I did, when Steve gave me your name, and I'm like, hey, Gower, I'm like, who's that? And I was looking at the picture like, oh, that's the guy. Wait a minute, that's what? I was like, oh shit! Like I've watched the guy forever. It was just really big, man, and to know that kind of influence happened when I saw you. Like, damn, this is important. And I'm pretty sure like other people are seeing it and seeing this and just building into this monster. Like, you know what I mean? It's like literally you taking the documentary from a movie that you made that didn't go where it was supposed to go, but actually it did go where it was supposed to go 30 years later, and it's going even bigger and continuously growing from there. So much success to you, Andre. Like, I'm definitely glad that I had the opportunity to speak with you today. Wanted to ask you, so what are some other things besides the documentary and the kind of tour circuit that you're doing now? Are you doing anything else with film and industry?
I mean, all the time, we, as creatives and producers and directors and, you always have projects that you want to do that are yours. You always have projects that you want to be involved in. I have a production development and production company called Fitter Piper Entertainment. And, there's a couple, projects, kind of tucked away in there that you're always talking about and trying to do. Henry McComas, who I made the documentary with, is an extremely talented, DP kind of cinematographer, director, producer mind. He's a really good writer. He's a very good storyteller. He finds ways to take current stories and weave some really good, interesting characters in there. And we've been working on a couple projects together for the last 2 or 3 years. And We've got one that is really at the top of the list right now that I'm just attached as a producer to. Henry's the writer director of it, and there's very few things I want to do in this world than to get that movie made for him and with him. And I love the story. I think it's a great time to do this type of it's a genre movie, and that's one of the top of the list projects to do. And I'm involved in some other stuff. I'm also an event person. I'm working on the beginning stages of a big event. Hopefully take place in the summer of 2024.
Awesome.
Like I said, before we started recording, I'm toying with launching another campaign, which is actually a men's health awareness campaign. And one of the components is to have a podcast with some really cool guests, because I think men's health awareness is not really talked about as much as it could be or should be. And we certainly don't talk about it, with each other, let alone in public. And,
Tough.
I had that, like I said, I had that idea a number of years ago, and then got very busy with a bunch of other projects, including the documentary. And then in July of 2021, I was playing tennis on Saturday morning and felt a little weird. And very quickly, I realized I was in trouble, and I had a massive heart attack on July 3rd of 2021. And lucky for me, I was with one of my best friends, Mike, playing tennis. He got me in his car, and we got to a place down the road that was, a standalone small ER type place, and went there, and they're like, you can't stay here. We got to get you down the road to the big boy hospital. And to the work of, for the awareness and the ability of my buddy Mike to get me out of there in time, to get me to that first place where that group of nurses and the doctor got me in the ambulance to the big hospital and to the big emergency department. And they basically saved my ass in the cath lab. And I got there very, very quickly, and I only had a few minutes to spare, because when something like that happens, you've got to be in the right place in the right time, or you're not coming out of it. And
that's awesome.
There was five or six things that lined up in my favor that morning. So Brian B and I can hang out tonight.
Glad you're here, bro. I'm really glad you're here, man. It's made my damn week right here. I'm not gonna lie to you. But yeah, listen, like I said, I'm so glad that you're able to overcome that experience. Very scary. Men's mental health, physical health too. You were saying that earlier. I hope that that's a project I would love to have come back on. Please talk about it.
Oh yeah.
Something that needs to be heard, with us. It's definitely a conversation that needs to be heard, bro. Because even you're a fit guy. I'm shit out of shape as like crazy. But
Yeah.
I mean, it can happen to anybody, man. That's what's crazy. Like, it can happen to anybody. You got to know what you're doing right, and pay attention to your body and its signs and different things. And this is very challenging, but I think that's amazing, bro. Andre, it's been unbelievable having you on today. I mean, definitely one of my favorite. I can honestly say, listen, Beeline, listen, don't talk. It's one of my favorite interviews, just off the strength of, I know the feeling that I got when I watched this movie, and probably, Monster Squad is probably one of the biggest reasons why I was into movies and acting. I was into the kids things, the same thing that I am into now. Like, I love I keep bringing back Stranger Things, Beeline, the Stranger Things. It's such a good show, but there's so many dynamics with the show where it's the kids, you got the kids in school, and then you're like, the kids can't beat the big bad. Yes, they can, because we got all this shit. It's just so much, man. I want to ask you, this is one more thing I want to ask you before we get ready to close up shop. In the world of remakes that we constantly have, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And you have remakes that are literally, a lot of times not even hitting the big screen. You just Amazon Plus, Netflix, whatever. Can you see them doing a great remake of the Monster Squad? Or would you say, if you had your choice, just leave it alone and let it be the cult classic that it is?
Well, we get this question often.
Gotcha.
But you phrased it differently than most, because you said, do you see a world where we get a great remake of Monster Squad? That answer is no.
Okay.
For a couple different reasons, not being, selfish, or, don't fix what ain't broke. But they were remaking this movie. It started in 2009. Rob Cohen, who happened to be a young producer on the original Monster Squad, who grew up to be Rob Cohen, who's a giant, studio director and producer. Did The Mummy and did all this other. I mean, it's just a huge
holy crap!
name
I didn't
in
know
the
that.
industry. When the resurgence kind of started, he looked at it and said, "Oh, we should remake this. We should reboot the Monster Squad," and teamed up with none other than Michael Bay and his company to remake the Monster.
What?
Yeah. So. And they announced that, and the pitchforks and torches came out from the fan base and didn't want anybody touching Monster Squad.
Holy crap,
But what's interesting is, it went into sort of like development, kind of hell, and they couldn't break the script, because the reason you can't have a great remake of Monster Squad is because you can't make the same movie anymore. Like, you can't have the kids doing the stuff. You just can't do that anymore.
Yeah, very true.
Now, I will say there are many, many things that are done well and super enjoyable that you can kind of say are the reboots of Monster Squad or inspired by. Stranger Things, a lot of things like that. They have so many
Yeah.
tones and themes, some direct lifts if you depend on who you talk to.
I feel you.
But that's okay. I don't think there needs to be a remake of the Monster Squad because we've seen kids band together. We've seen great movies fight the big bad, be the solution that the parents aren't listening or understand. Like 8mm is a great kind of modern example of that. It's very Squadish-esque, with a new, kind of, current twist on it. The fact that Monster Squad was 30 years ago as a movie, but it was based on stuff that was even 30 years before that.
Prior.
Because it's the classic Universal monster movies. Basically this is, it's one of my favorite things. And we have it at the very beginning of Fred Decker's kind of through interview in the documentary is Monster Squad is a story that came out of Fred Decker's mind when he was in college because he grew up watching TV and films. And the old classic monster jams were kind of his thing. And somewhere, in his mind, he said, what would it look like if the Little Rascals fought the classic Universal monsters? And the answer is the Monster Squad.
There you go.
And so, that was old as an idea even in 86, 87.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you go back to the classic well, but I think we've seen really good kind of kids adventure flicks and stories and TV shows that have come out of that era. Because Monster Squad's not the only kids adventure film, from the 80s. It's one of the cool ones because it was dark. It had classic monsters. It had a body count. The Goonies doesn't have a body count.
That's right. Yeah. You know something? It doesn't.
The Goonies is great. The Goonies is great, and Goonies fans are amazing. And the Goonies are fantastic at saving their neighborhood from a developer. We saved the world from Dracula, but,
Dracula, werewolf, and
there's some other great kids adventure movies that are even lighthearted or darker. And Monster Squad happens to be one of those era. And I don't think you can make a great remake. We've seen great inspired buys. Now, if you want to do a great sequel, I think you could do a great sequel in a modern time,
man.
With new technology, it's still a kids movie. With the originals in it, and weave in some of the things that we missed in the original, or that need to be expanded on, or create a backstory. There's a lot of fun in the Monster Squad world that you can do, and we're doing all this franchisable IP now and different stories, and I was like, there's so much you could do here. With the stuff that's open, but and it's not just it's a personal thing, but also an overall thing. I think a reboot and calling the Monster Squad doesn't work as well as some people, because they've tried many times.
I didn't know that.
They've tried a handful of times. But I think a sequel for the audience, and then expand it out a little bit to have a new kind of kids adventure movie. Then there's a passing of the torch type thing. There's a really cool story that could go with that, I think, and could be done really, really well. So, we'll see. They got to hurry up. We're not getting any younger. I'm
trying to tell you, bro. Because you even saying it. Listen, if you even saying it would be like one of the biggest things, because like you said, maybe not a reboot or whatever, but a sequel, like bringing it back, bring back whatever brings you're not going to go wrong with Dracula and the Wolfman and Frankenstein. Tom Cruise, the Mummy, movie that they had came out, they were supposed to be doing a whole new monster universe with that.
Well, that's all the same time of what we're talking about when Rob Cohen and Platinum Dunes were thinking about rebooting Monster Squad. So they were trying to develop that story, which I guess they were having some, kind of, struggles with. Bro. But then Universal announced the Dark Universe. And the Dark Universe, they were going to be doing standalones with their classic characters again, and then they were going to marvel them together and do them all together. And as soon as Universal Studios said, we're doing the Dark Universe, that's when the remake of Monster Squad from that particular group was like, well, if they're doing that, there's no reason to remake the Monster Squad because they're doing it. So the Monster Squad reboot died. And then shortly after The Mummy came out, the Universal Dark Universe died.
I thought that was great, man. I don't know why they hung up. I thought that would have been an amazing idea, bro.
Well, I think the problem is Universal was going to do this idea of this campaign, putting all their classics out and then putting them together eventually. And because Marvel was having a great time doing it.
Yeah.
And no one understood. I don't think anybody knew that the first installment of that was not The Mummy that they put Tom Cruise in. It was Dracula Untold. And that was actually an okay movie that no one saw.
I didn't see it either.
And then so Universal, I think, panicked and said, well, shit, we're doing The Mummy next. Is Tom Cruise available? We got to have him in this movie. And so kind of plugged this character into a movie that I thought was actually okay, even without that Tom Cruise.
I thought it was too. Yeah, I thought it was too. It was pretty good.
But it just didn't land. And so the whole thing died. And so that was a very interesting time when both of all those kind of concepts kind of fizzled. Now, Universal's doing it the right way. They are, some of it's going through Blumhouse, and they're doing smaller budgets with better storytellers, because that's where creativity comes in. It's like, if you give a filmmaker $100 million to go make this giant movie, they can do whatever they want to. They're not confined into a box that you have to really squeeze the best out of a little bit. You get so many better stories and movies when you do that. And, there's a great example, like, now we're seeing The Invisible Man, from Lee Wannell.
That was good. That was good. Really good. That was a really
classic.
Good.
It's a modern version of the classic Invisible Man tale. It takes place currently. It's an old story. It's small. It's contained, and it's got some good stuff with great acting, with great performances.
That movie was really good.
So you need a decent script. You need a tight production, and you need great performances. And I think you got that out of that. Now they're doing, Ryan Gosling's doing Wolf. It's the same people doing it in these smaller
I didn't even
boxes.
hear that.
Yeah, so
you're talking bombs.
The opposite examples of giving big franchises giant money is the Matrix. The first Matrix movies blew everybody's mind because it was technology, it was new camera work, it was new stunt work, it was fascinating, it was about the internet, it was about this fake world, and then it was such a big hit that they gave the Wachowskis $7 gazillion to make 2 more movies, and those movies suck.
Nobody liked them at all.
Nobody. I don't want to say this will suck. I hate to poo-poo people.
I feel you though. You're right though.
Hard. It's really very hard to get movies made and done and finished. So I don't ever try to poo-poo something that gets done, but those movies should have been much, much different.
Yeah, that's a good point, man.
And the first one was so innovative and such a great story.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, we can do whatever we want to because we made the world's biggest movie of all time.
Dragon Ball Z and shit. I'm like, bro, like you just said, like you said it, the fight scene between Neo and Mr. Anderson in the damn train station, bro. Listen, that might be one of the best fight scenes of all time, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's innovative. But what's interesting is we have to evolve, and we can't. Because the one thing that I'm glad we didn't do is have 75 movies that had the same effects and fight scenes as Matrix. And it was a kind of a standalone. But what that does, that leads to progression and evolution and creativity. And then you get great action movies like, the John Wick series, which is, made by stuntmen. Most movies are a story that have some stunts in it. Chad Stahelski, being a stunt guy, wanted to make a stunt that has a movie inside of it. So he flipped it around. So we're going around to this constant, action. Is it far-fetched? Is it fantastic? Yes. Is it stylish and sexy as hell? Absolutely. Yep. Is Keanu Reeves great in it? Yeah. It's because if you give Keanu Reeves less to do, he's better.
I'm telling you, bro.
He's so good. He's so good.
He's so phenomenal, yo.
And I just think he's a good human being. I don't know him personally. We may have met when we were kids, but I think he's a cool bean. And I think there's a handful of cool beans out there that I think we need to be, letting be our, kind of guideposts. But that's, we're talking about remakes. It's let better and new storytellers have different ideas, give them a smaller sandbox to play in, and they will prove that that's the right way to go. The other example of the wrong way to do that is what we're doing with Star Wars on the movies, because we had all these great innovative storytellers with these giant budgets, and you're like, well, but we didn't do it. Like, we didn't get what we wanted, except for a couple examples. But Disney's giant galactic size, pun intended, juggernaut that says you are going to operate inside of our thing. We can't really turn the reins over to anybody. And I think the Solo movie would have been better if you had let them kind of run with it. But who else but Ron Howard has to come in and save a movie? I love Ron Howard. I love Ron Howard movies. But should he be making a Star Wars? God.
I mean,
it gets so boring. And then you go back to J.J. Abrams, which I love J.J. Abrams.
That's movies. My boy right there. Yeah,
I love J.J. Abrams. I think that his is the original Chris Pine Stark. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
But do we need two of you making a Star Wars? Like, no, let's get some some innovation in here.
I feel
And and then Gareth Edwards comes out with Rogue One, and it's the best one of them all.
Hey, listen, man.
But
You onto something. You dropped some bombs on here today, Andre.
Yeah.
Listen, bro, you definitely got us thinking, man. And Beeline even he hit the watch list. John Wick, Star Wars. Andre been taking over the show today. That was phenomenal, man. But I definitely agree with you. I think that it's the creativity. It's not all about money, man. Sometimes you could be in your basement just writing that script for years, and you got the greatest movie of all time. But if you got a guy who's constantly doing it, eating good, happy, got how much butter? We can make it work. I can understand it. Just that concept alone, very flooded or whatever. But yeah, that seems amazing. Andre, man, it's been phenomenal talking to you. Thank you so much. You even shouted my mom. Hey, mom, listen, he shouted you out on the thing. She gonna have a flip when she sees this. But thank you so much, bro. I'm so glad that everything worked out for you. Congratulations on all your success and everything you've done. Can't wait to see more from you. Please, 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 please keep my email. Hit me up. Anything else you do, come on the Beeline, man. I'm pushing like it's like you the president forever.
Oh, I want to come to you, and we'll do it in the room,
bro. Listen, you see the studio?
I'll do that.
This whole studio here. I love that. I would love that. Bro.
I love technology. I love Zoom. There's nothing like being in the room with someone. So
anytime,
we'll come back and we'll connect on the next thing and shoot the fish for a little longer.
Sounds awesome. Yo, Andre, it's been freaking amazing talking to you. Beeline, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. This has been an amazing interview. Go check out if you haven't. I don't even have to say it. The obvious watch list of today is going to be the Monster Squad, bro. I know you can find it on Amazon Prime. Where's the documentary at so people can check that out as well?
Well, the documentary called Wolfman's Got Nards, which is the only title for a documentary about the Monster Squad. You can find it if you are a AVOD fan. It's currently on Tubi and Pluto TV. If you are a streaming fan and don't mind VOD and like to either rent something or download it digitally, it's on a ton of platforms: Google Plus, iTunes, Amazon. And you can, I think, still order even a Blu-ray if you are a physical, you like to chew on media. You can order a Blu-ray there. So Wolfman's Got Nards is there. Monster Squad's out wherever you can find it. And other stuff. Love to support it. Watch it. Hit me up on socials. Let me know if you like either one of them. We love to talk about it. So we appreciate everybody that's out there that gives it anybody time.
And Beeline, you already know me. I'm going to have everything in the description box for you. When you guys are watching this, just click down below and check out Mr. Andre Gower. Really cool guy, man. And looking so much forward to everything else that you got. But until next time, stay true, stay positive, pay attention, and make sure you watch the Monster Squad, baby, because ain't nobody going to be putting it back out because it's a classic movie. And I grew up, and your boy Brian B, 36, getting old, and we got to start taking care of yourself. That's why we got to talk about mental health now. We got everything going in line. But, yo, I love you guys. Have a great night.